I never thought my own family would try to bar me from my father's 60th birthday celebration, yet here I stood outside the Grand Azure, watching my sister Madeline block the entrance with her designer-clad body. The five-star hotel's facade loomed behind her, its elegant architecture a stark contrast to the ugly scene unfolding at its doors. "You can't be serious," I said, adjusting my simple black dress, one that cost more than Madeline's monthly salary, not that she knew that. "He's my father too." Madeline's perfectly painted lips curved into a sneer. "Look, Catherine, this isn't some casual dinner at Applebee's. The Grand Azure is exclusive." She emphasized the word like it was beyond my comprehension. "The tasting menu alone costs more than you probably make in a month." If she only knew that I'd designed that menu personally with our Michelin-starred chef. "Besides," she continued, checking her reflection in the glass doors, "Mom and Dad were clear, they only want successful people here. People who won't embarrass the family." I thought about the irony of her words. Just yesterday I'd signed off on $100 million expansion of the Grand Azure chain. Today I was apparently too embarrassing to enter my own hotel. This whole situation would be almost funny if it didn't hurt so much. 10 years ago, when I decided to leave the family's small accounting firm to pursue my own path in hospitality management, they'd all but disowned me. My father's words still echoed in my memory. "No daughter of mine is going to be a glorified waitress." So I'd let them think what they wanted. Let them believe I was struggling working minor jobs in restaurant management. Meanwhile, I'd built Azure Hospitality Group into one of the most successful luxury hotel chains in the country. The glorified waitress now owned 35 five-star hotels across 3 continents. "Catherine," my mother's sharp voice cut through my thoughts as she appeared behind Madeline. "What are you doing here?" "We discussed this." No, they had discussed it. I'd received a text message this morning. "Don't come to Dad's birthday. It's at the Grand Azure. You can't afford it. Don't embarrass us." "I brought a gift," I said quietly, holding up the small envelope. Inside was the deed to a vacation villa in Tuscany, one of the Grand Azure's most exclusive properties. I'd planned to give it to my father as both a birthday gift and a revelation of who I really was. "Oh, what is it?" "A gift card to Olive Garden." Madeline laughed. "Or did you scrape together enough tips to buy him something from the mall?" My mother's eyes narrowed at my simple clutch bag, a handmade Italian leather piece that cost more than Madeline's car. "Whatever it is, I'm sure your sister's gift is more appropriate. She just made junior partner at her firm, you know." I knew. Just like I knew her firm was currently in negotiations to lease office space in one of my buildings. The lease they desperately needed and couldn't quite afford. "Madeline's doing so well," Mom continued, warming to her favorite topic. "New house in the suburbs, luxury car, wonderful fiancé with such good prospects." She paused, giving me a critical once-over. "And you? Well, at least you're trying, I suppose." I thought about my penthouse overlooking Central Park, my collection of rare sports cars, the private jet I'd flown in on this morning. "His Mom. At least I'm trying." "Speaking of trying," Madeline smirked, "that dress, couldn't you have made an effort? This is the Grand Azure, not some diner." I ran my hand over the sophisticated black silk, custom-made by one of Paris's most exclusive designers. The same designer who had refused to make anything for Madeline last month. Not that she needed to know that connection. "It's what I could manage," I said mildly. "Well, you can't come in," Madeline declared. "We reserved the entire VIP floor. It's for family and distinguished guests only." The VIP floor. My VIP floor. The one I'd personally redesigned last year, down to selecting every piece of artwork in crystal chandelier. The distinguished guests being? I asked, genuinely curious about who they'd invited. "Oh, you wouldn't know them," my mother waved her hand dismissively. "The Andersons, they own that successful law firm. The Blackwoods' old money, you know. And Mr. Harrison from the bank. All very important people." I suppressed a smile. Thomas Anderson leased 3 of my properties. The Blackwoods had recently begged for a membership at my most exclusive resort. And Mr. Harrison? His bank was currently seeking a major loan from my investment group. "Right," I said. "Very important people." "Exactly," Madeline said, clearly pleased I understood my place. "So you see why you can't be here. What would people think if they knew Dad's failure of a daughter was serving their drinks?" "Madeline, our mother chided softly, though her eyes showed approval. Be nice. Catherine made her choices. If she'd stayed with the family firm like you did, things would be different. The family firm that now occupied a modest office in one of my buildings, always barely making rent. Just then my brother-in-law Charles appeared, straightening his tie. What's taking so long? Everyone's waiting for, oh. He spotted me and his face dropped. Catherine, didn't expect to see you here. Clearly not, I replied. Charles just made vice president at his bank, my mother announced proudly. Junior vice president, I corrected automatically, knowing his exact position because his bank handled some of my smaller accounts. Well, it's more impressive than whatever you're doing, Madeline snapped. What is it now? Assistant manager at some chain restaurant. I thought about the board meeting I'd left early this morning, where we'd discussed acquiring that very bank Charles worked for. The paperwork was probably still sitting on my desk upstairs in my private office. Something like that, I said. This is ridiculous, my mother declared. Catherine, just go. You're making a scene. I'll tell your father you couldn't make it. Couldn't afford it, you mean? Madeline added with a laugh. I looked past them through the grand entrance at the hotel I'd built from the ground up. At the marble floors I'd selected, the crystal chandeliers I'd commissioned, the artwork I'd personally curated. All of it, every inch was mine. For a moment I considered walking away. Let them have their party. Let them keep believing what they wanted to believe. But then I remembered something my first mentor had told me. Success doesn't mean anything if you can't stand up for yourself. I straightened my shoulders, feeling the strength of everything I'd built without their support or approval. Actually, I said quietly, I think I'll stay. Before my mother could respond, the heavy glass doors swung open and James, my head of security, stepped out. He'd been with me since I bought my first struggling hotel 7 years ago, helping transform it into the flagship of the Azure chain. Is everything all right here, Madam CO? His voice carried clearly across the entrance. Your usual table is ready, and Chef Michel held the menu tasting for your approval. The silence that followed was deafening. Madeline's mouth fell open, her perfectly applied lipstick suddenly garish against her pale face. My mother gripped the brass door handle for support. James, I smiled warmly. Perfect timing. My family was just explaining how I couldn't afford to dine here. Ma'am. He looked genuinely confused. But you own Dash. The entire hotel chain. Yes, I do. I turned to my stunned family. Shall we go inside? I believe you've reserved the VIP floor. My VIP floor, to be precise. Charles found his voice first. This is some kind of joke. You're just a restaurant manager. Actually, James interjected professionally. Miss Catherine is the founder and CEO of Azure Hospitality Group. She owns all 35 Grand Azure hotels worldwide, along with our resort properties and restaurant chains. Madeline's designer clutch slipped from her fingers, clattering on the marble steps. But that's impossible. The Grand Azure is worth billions, I finished for her. Which makes your comment about me not being able to afford the tasting menu rather amusing. I stepped past them into my hotel's lobby, where the staff immediately straightened to attention. Good evening, Miss Catherine, my front desk manager called out. The executive suite is prepared for your father's birthday celebration. Thank you, Sarah. I turned back to my family, still frozen in the doorway. Coming. They followed me in silence, looking around as if seeing the hotel for the first time. Every staff member we passed greeted me by name, each showing the genuine respect I'd earned through years of hands-on leadership. But your dress. My mother finally managed, staring at my simple black dress with new eyes. Custom made in Paris. Around $30,000, I believe. I have a terrible habit of not checking price tags anymore. I led them to the private elevator, the one that required a special key I pulled from my clutch. Unlike Madeline's dress, which I believe is a knockoff, the real Valentino collection hasn't been released yet. I know because I attended the private showing last month. The elevator doors opened directly into the VIP lounge, where my father's birthday celebration was in full swing. The room fell silent as we entered. Catherine, my father stood up from his place at the head table, his face a mix of shock and confusion. What are you doing here? Your mother said you couldn't afford it. I finished, walking over to him. Happy birthday, Dad. I hope you don't mind that I'm crashing the party. In my own hotel. Your hotel. Mr. Harrison from the bank stepped forward, his face breaking into a relieved smile. Miss Catherine, I had no idea you were related to James Thompson. We've been trying to secure a meeting with you for months about that loan. Catherine owns the Grand Azure? Thomas Anderson joined in. My God, James, your daughter is the mysterious CEO who's been buying up prime real estate across the city. My father sank back into his chair, the color draining from his face. All this time, when we thought you were just a glorified waitress? I raised an eyebrow. Your words, I believe. From the day I left the family firm to pursue my dreams in hospitality. But why didn't you tell us? My mother demanded, still clutching her pearls like a lifeline. Would you have believed me? I asked quietly. You didn't believe in me 10 years ago when I needed your support. Why would I share my success with people who only measure worth by the size of someone's bank account? I paused. Though by that metric I suppose I'm worth more than everyone in this room combined. Madeline collapsed into a nearby chair, her face ashen. The villa in the south of France I tried to rent last summer. The one that was mysteriously unavailable. Mine, I confirmed. Just like the office building your firm is struggling to lease, Charles. And the resort membership you've been waitlisted for, Mother. Catherine, my father started, his voice unsteady. We. Save it. I held up my hand. I didn't reveal this to hurt you, though you've hurt me plenty over the years. I did it because I'm tired of hiding my success to spare your pride. I turned to address the room. Please enjoy the party. Everything is on the house, my house. I started to walk away, then paused. Oh, and Dad? That envelope Madeline wouldn't let me give you? It's the deed to a villa in Tuscany. One of my most exclusive properties. Consider it a birthday gift from your failure of a daughter. The next hour was surreal. People who had ignored me at previous family gatherings suddenly wanted to discuss business opportunities. The Blackwoods practically begged for that resort membership. Mr. Harrison cornered me about his bank's loan application. Through it all, my family sat in stunned silence. Madeline's fiancé disappeared after learning her guaranteed future partnership at her firm depended on a lease she couldn't afford in my building. Charles kept making calls, presumably to update his resume. My mother alternated between crying and trying to explain to other guests that she'd always believed in her daughter's potential. As the evening wound down, I found my father alone on the terrace, staring out at the city lights. Those buildings, he pointed to the skyline. How many do you own? Enough, I replied, standing beside him. The family firm's building included. He nodded slowly. I was wrong about you, Catherine. So terribly wrong. Yes, I agreed. You were. Can you ever forgive us? I considered his question, thinking about all the years of dismissal and condescension. Forgiveness isn't the issue, Dad. Respect is. You never respected my choices or believed in my abilities. You only respect success after it's proven. And now. I smiled slightly. Now you can tell people your daughter owns the Grand Azure. That should satisfy your need for impressive dinner party conversation. I left him there, heading to my private office on the top floor. Tomorrow the family dynamic would shift dramatically. Madeline would no longer be the golden child. My mother would frantically rewrite history to claim she'd always supported me. Charles and his bank would probably face acquisition.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Chen, and this is the story of how I learned that sometimes the quietest person in the room holds all the cards. It's funny how life works. One day you're being ordered around by your entitled cousins, and the next, you're signing their termination papers. But let me start from the beginning. My Aunt Victoria was always the black sheep of our family, while her siblings chased traditional paths. Doctors, lawyers, accountants. She built a tech empire from scratch. Chen Innovations became a $2 billion company under her leadership, but you'd never guess it from her modest lifestyle. She wore simple clothes, drove a 10-year-old car, and lived in the same house she bought when she started the company. I was the only one who really knew her. While my cousins Marcus and Diana were busy attending elite private schools and bragging about their family connections, I spent my weekends at Aunt Victoria's house, learning to code on her old computer. Business isn't about fancy degrees, Jenny, she'd say, watching me debug my first program. It's about seeing what others miss. My parents died in a car accident when I was 12, and Aunt Victoria took me in. My other relatives whispered that it was out of guilt. She had been too busy building her empire to help her brother when he was struggling financially. But I knew better. Aunt Victoria saw something in me that others didn't. For 15 years, I worked alongside her, starting from the bottom. While Marcus and Diana partied through college, I was learning every aspect of Chen Innovations, from customer service to product development. My cousins mockingly called me Aunt Victoria's shadow. But I didn't care. I was learning things no business school could teach. Then came the diagnosis. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. Aunt Victoria faced it like she faced everything else. Practically and without drama. "Jenny," she said one evening as we sat in her home office, "I need you to promise me something." "Anything," I replied, fighting back tears. "Don't let them know how smart you are." "Not until the right moment." She handed me a sealed envelope. "This contains everything you need. But timing is everything. You'll know when." I didn't understand then. But I would soon enough. Aunt Victoria passed away quietly in her sleep 3 months later. The funeral was a who's who of the tech industry, but my cousins managed to make it about themselves. Marcus gave a tearful speech about his beloved aunt, whom he barely visited in the past decade. Diana sobbed dramatically for the cameras, clutching her designer handbag. The real drama started at the well reading. The family gathered at Chen Innovations headquarters, my aunt's siblings, their spouses, Marcus, Diana, and me. Everyone expected the company to go to Marcus, the oldest male heir, with significant shares distributed among the family. After all, that's how things were usually done in our traditional Chinese family. The lawyer, Mr. Patterson, cleared his throat and began reading. The first few minutes were standard, small bequests to longtime employees, donations to charities. Then came the bombshell. "And to my niece, Jennifer Chen, I leave my controlling interest in Chen Innovations, comprising 70% of all voting shares. The remaining 30% to be distributed among current employees according to their years of service." The room erupted in chaos. "This is impossible," Marcus shouted, his face turning red. "She's just a junior employee. She doesn't even have an MBA." Diana's mascara ran as she cried. "We're the rightful heirs. She's just the poor relation Aunt Victoria took in out of pity." My Uncle James, their father, stood up shakily. "There must be some mistake. Victoria wouldn't leave everything to the help." Diana spat. Mr. Patterson remained calm. "The will is quite clear, and I assure you, your sister was of sound mind when she made these arrangements. Furthermore," he pulled out another document, "Ms. Jennifer Chen has been secretly serving as deputy CEO for the past 2 years. All the paperwork is in order." I sat quietly, remembering Aunt Victoria's words about timing. This wasn't the moment. Not yet. The family meeting that followed was brutal. They gathered at Uncle James' mansion, the same one he'd bought with money borrowed from Aunt Victoria years ago. I was invited, but it was clear what my role was supposed to be. "Jenny, be a dear and serve the coffee," Aunt Helen, Marcus's mother, said with a sweet smile that didn't reach her eyes. "That's what you're good at, right? Serving others?" I played along, pouring coffee for everyone as they discussed options, as if I wasn't even there. "We need to contest the will," Uncle James declared. Victoria wasn't thinking clearly near the end. Obviously, Marcus sneered, not even looking at me as I refilled his cup. "Look at her, she doesn't have what it takes to run a billion-dollar company. She's not even dressed properly." He had a point about my clothes. I was wearing a simple blouse and slacks while they were all in designer outfits. What they didn't know was that I owned the building their favorite designer's flagship store was in. "The board will never accept her," Diana added, checking her reflection in her phone. "They need someone with proper education, proper connections." I continued serving coffee, watching them plan my downfall. They spent hours plotting legal challenges, board member contacts, media strategies. Not once did they actually address me directly. I was furniture to them, just like I've been all these years. Finally, Uncle James turned to me. "Jenny, this can be easy or difficult. Sign over the shares to Marcus, and we'll give you a generous settlement. Enough to live comfortably. It's what's best for everyone." I looked at their expectant faces, the same people who had barely acknowledged my existence at family gatherings, who had mocked my close relationship with Aunt Victoria, who had called me the charity case behind my back. I'll think about it, I said softly, gathering the coffee cups. The board meeting is on Monday. I'll have my answer then. They smiled triumphantly, already celebrating their victory. Marcus even patted my head condescendingly. Good girl. I knew you'd see reason. As I left the mansion, I pulled out my phone and the envelope Aunt Victoria had given me. Inside were documents, passwords, and a letter. The time for hiding is over, she had written. Show them who you really are. I smiled as I sent a series of pre-prepared emails. Monday's board meeting would certainly be interesting. After all, what my dear cousins didn't know was that while they were busy being the public face of the family, I had spent 15 years becoming the backbone of Chen Innovations. Every major client contract had my name on it. Every successful product launched in the past 5 years had my code in it. Every key employee owed their position to my recommendations. They thought Monday's board meeting would be their triumph. They had no idea what was coming. Monday morning dawned bright and clear. I arrived at Chen Innovations headquarters at 6 a.m., 2 hours before the board meeting. The security guards nodded respectfully. They'd known who I really was for years. I heard Marcus and Diana had been calling board members all weekend, rallying support for their planned coup. Let them try. I changed into the outfit I prepared. Not the designer suits my cousins favored, but a perfectly tailored black dress that Aunt Victoria had given me for my last birthday. Power isn't about looking powerful, she'd said. It's about being powerful. At 7:45, I watched through my office window as Marcus and Diana arrived, both looking smug. They'd brought Uncle James and Aunt Helen too, probably for added pressure. They were all dressed like they were attending a fashion show rather than a board meeting. Time to greet the family, I whispered to myself, picking up the stack of folders I prepared. The boardroom was tense when I walked in. 12 board members sat around the massive table, with my family occupying one end. Marcus was already sitting in the CEO's chair, practicing his signature smirk. Jenny, Diana called out sweetly, be a dear and get us some coffee before you go. I smiled. Of course. But first, I pressed a button on the intercom. Sarah, please bring in the documents. My executive assistant, whom my cousins had always assumed was Aunt Victoria's, walked in with a cart of folders. I began distributing them personally to each board member. What's this? Marcus demanded, trying to snatch a folder from my hands. Patience, cousin, I said quietly, continuing my round. All will be clear in a moment. Once everyone had their folders, I walked to the head of the table. Marcus was still in the CEO's chair. You're in my seat, I said softly. He laughed. Come on, Jenny, we all know. Mr. Chen, I cut him off, my voice suddenly sharp. You are in my seat. Move. Something in my tone made him stand up, though he tried to play it off as humor. The board members were already reading their folders, and I could see their expressions changing. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, I began. In those folders you'll find several things. First, detailed reports of every major decision made at Chen Innovations over the past 5 years. You'll notice my signature on 90% of them. Yes, those decisions you attributed to others were actually mine. Marcus tried to interrupt, but I continued. You'll also find documentation of certain interesting financial transactions. Marcus, would you like to explain to the board why $2 million of company funds were diverted to cover your gambling debts last year? His face went white. That's confidential. Diana, I turned to my cousin, who was frantically flipping through her folder. Perhaps you'd like to tell everyone about the fake consulting firm you set up to build a company for services never rendered. You can't prove, she stammered. Oh, but I can. Aunt Victoria and I documented everything. We let it slide, hoping you'd learn, grow up, become responsible. We were wrong. Uncle James stood up, his face purple with rage. Now see here. Sit down, Uncle, I said quietly. Your section is on page 12. The irregular loans, the misappropriated funds, the shell companies. Would you like me to continue? He collapsed into his chair. For years, I addressed the board. I worked quietly, learning every aspect of this company. While others took credit for my work, I let them. Because Aunt Victoria taught me that true power doesn't need recognition. It needs results. I clicked a remote, and the screen behind me lit up with charts. Under my direct management, though others took credit, our R&D department increased productivity by 200%. Our client retention rate rose to 98%. Our profit margins doubled. The board members were nodding now, many of them finally understanding why certain departments had mysteriously improved over the years. Now I continued, we have a choice. You can support my cousin's attempted coup, in which case I'll be forced to release all this information to the media and proper authorities. Or, I pressed another button, and new documents appeared on the screen. Or we can move forward with the expansion plans I've spent the last year developing. 5 new tech centers, partnerships with leading AI research facilities, and a revolutionary product line that will put us years ahead of our competitors. The room was silent. I could see the board members exchanging glances, doing the math in their heads. Finally, Mr. Rodriguez, our longest-serving board member, spoke up. I moved to formally confirm Jennifer Chen as CEO of Chen Innovations, effective immediately. Seconded came multiple voices. This is ridiculous, Marcus exploded. She's nothing. She's nobody. She's just the poor little orphan that. Mr. Chen, I cut him off, my voice ice cold. You're fired. Security is waiting outside to escort you from the building. Diana, you too. Your belongings have already been packed. You can't do this. Diana shrieked. We're family. I looked at her calmly. Family? Was I family when you made me serve coffee? Was I family when you mocked my clothes, my education, my dedication to Aunt Victoria? No, Diana. You made it very clear what you thought of me as family. Security entered the room, more guards that had known my real position for years. Uncle James, Aunt Helen. I turned to them. You have a choice. You can accept my leadership and keep your shares as silent partners, or you can join your children in unemployment. Decide now. They looked at each other, then at their screamy children being escorted out, and nodded meekly. As the chaos subsided, I addressed the board again. Now, shall we discuss those expansion plans? The next few hours were productive. By the end of the day, my position was secure, the expansion plans were approved, and a press release announcing the new leadership was circulating. That evening, I sat in Aunt Victoria's old office, my office now, looking at her picture. You taught me well, I whispered. Power isn't about shouting the loudest or wearing the most expensive clothes. It's about patience, knowledge, and timing. My phone was full of messages from family members suddenly remembering how much they'd always loved me. I ignored them all except one. From my aunt's old housekeeper, Maria, who'd been kind to me even when I was just the poor relation. You did good, Miss Jenny, her message read. Your aunt would be proud. I smiled, looking out over the city lights. The company would thrive under my leadership, not because I was born into privilege, but because I'd earned every step of my success. Marcus and Diana. Last I heard, they were trying to start their own company. Good luck to them. They'll finally have to learn what real work means. As for me, I keep Aunt Victoria's lessons close to heart. Success isn't about being seen as powerful. It's about being powerful. And sometimes, the quietest person in the room is the one you should watch out for. After all, they might just own the room.